Yo, what's up, guys? We are going to be talking about my Lightning Arrow Deadeye today. And before I do get into the gear and start showing everything, I do want to mention I am using Evasion and Maximum Life on all my gear. And I'm using a Temporalis, which isn't the most optimal, but I was in the process of switching to Mind Over Matter and stacking ES. But with the patch notes coming out tomorrow on the 12th, I'm pretty sure it's going to get nerfed because it seems pretty overtuned for defense. So with that being said, let's get into the gear. And surprise, like everyone in the game, I am chain procking my heralds, making my Herald of Thunder freeze and my Herald of Ice shock. And we're doing that by running Cold Infusion, Glaciation, Long Shot, Lightning Mastery, and Cold Pen on my Herald of Thunder. And my Herald of Ice, we are running Lightning Infusion, Conduction, Magnified Effect, Overcharge, and Cold Mastery. And to get this to work, you do need a stack flat cold damage. As you can see here, I have 2800 to 9200. If you don't have a high cold damage, your heralds will not proc off each other because you won't freeze and shatter the mobs. And you get this much cold damage in a few different ways. The most effective way is getting a damages extra cold on it against the darkness. They are a little pricey if you get like a decent second mod. They're probably like anywhere from like 8 to 15 div for like, semi decent ones, and then they could go up to a lot for 2 like really good mods. If that's a little out of your budget, then another thing you can do to stack cold damage, as you can see here, I have flat cold on both of my rings. I also have flat cold on my quiver. My quiver is not the best, but you can also get flat cold on your bow. And I can't really give you like an exact number that you need for the cold damage, but you can like test it on your own. You can check your cold damage here in your tooltip. You could load up a map, and then you could see if your heralds are proccing off each other. So I mean, this isn't really like the most optimal herald setup if you're like just getting into maps, because you're gonna need a bit of gear, nothing like too crazy to make it work. But for the people who are like just starting maps and they're playing Lightning Arrow Deadeye, in the description of this video I will put a like secondary gem links that you can use until you farm up enough currency to either get in against the darkness or a bunch of flat cold on your gear. And then I can also post like a couple uniques that'll help with that will help. But then getting into the rest of the links, we're using Lightning Arrow with Martial Tempo, Ice Bite, Primal Armament, Innervate, and for my 6th link, we are using Inspiration. I do see a lot of people are complaining, saying that they have mana issues playing this build. And there's a few ways around that. Obviously, putting Inspiration in your 6th link helps. And if you're only running a 5 link, you can run these 5 links, and then you can get mana on kill on your quiver. You might be able to get it on your bow. Not recommended on your bow, but you gotta do what you gotta do. You could get mana leech on your rings. That's like a couple good ways. And then for mana issues, like if you're doing like bosses and like pinnacle bosses, you will need a Thief's Torment. I would not recommend using this in maps, just for the fact that like when you put it on, it disables your 2nd ring, and then like as you can see, my resists are really bad. And like it's not too bad against bosses because you have unlimited mana basically with this, so like you're just hitting the boss and he's pretty much like perma frozen once you have enough like freeze, so the resists like aren't really that big of a deal. I don't really get one-shotted by too many bosses, even with the resist not being maxed, so that's like a must-have for bosses. And if you're just starting out and you can't really afford the Thief's Torment, I think it is like 2 divs, you could take this node right here, Mental Toughness, until you can afford a Thief's Torment, And then obviously once you get the Thief's Torment, just spec out of this and then just toss this on whenever you're doing bosses, and that'll make every boss like a lot easier because you won't have to worry about your mana. And then moving on, we're using Wind Dancer for our evasion with a blind. And if you do put your quality on your Wind Dancer to 20%, you do get an extra stage, so it's 4 max instead of 3. It gives you a little bit more evasion. We are using Orb of Storms on bosses with Chain, Persistence, Unleash, and Overabundance. And the way that we use this is you stand on the boss, you drop down your, orb, and then you just spam lightning rods on it. And you can see my mana's already out. I use a mana pot, it's already out. So if I had the Thief's Torment and I was constantly hitting the boss, my mana wouldn't move, so I would be able to just sit here and I would just be able to spam lightning rod like that. That's like what we do against bosses. We would also have Cast on Shock on the boss, and our Cast on Shock has Ball of Lightning, Deceleration, Impetus, and Energy Retention. And that's like most of our damage. Like our Orb of Storms doesn't do much damage, but it procs our rod, so it does the damage, and then our Ball of Lightning goes through it, and then our orb is proccing all of our lightning damage, so it's just shocking and it's doing a lot of damage. This build can kill all the bosses in the game, even with stacking like clear speed items, and I'm stacking Rarity, and it still kills all bosses like no problem. And for my build, since I am using a Temporalis, I do have Blink. If you're not using a Temporalis, then obviously you could use a rare chest with at least 2000 evasion, or if you want to get like clear speed that'll be somewhat close to a Temporalis, you could use a Queen of the Forest, and it'll just give you a bunch of movement speed, which is most likely what I'll do if they do nerf Mind Over Matter and Energy Shield. Plus the Temporalis is really expensive right now. So we can go over the gear now. I am using a 400 DPS bow. I do kind of want to upgrade it. So I'm using, percent fizz is good. You'd want like flat damage. If you need the cold, you get the cold. But if you have a lot of cold on your rings and your quiver, you don't necessarily need it on your bow. Might be able to find some cheaper bows, because I know the bows and quivers on the market are very expensive right now. Very overpriced. And the increased elemental damage with attacks is actually really good with Lightning Arrow. And then obviously the attack speed's good, and then other mods you could kind of get whatever you need. If you need mana on kill, And then for my quiver, you do want a flat damage, and then the percent increased damage with bow skills is like one of the most important, and then +2 to all projectiles is very important as well. And then obviously you want like a dextral. And the reason the quivers are like so expensive right now in this meta is when you have the stats on it with the +2 projectiles. As you can see, my lightning arrow is level 26. We are stacking, I have 15% increased quiver bonus jewels. And as you can see, mine have attack speed, projectile damage. This one is attack speed, damage against rares, another 15% quiver. This one is lightning damage, 15%, 15% with quivers, 2% attack speed. As you can see, like all of my jewels are 15% quiver, and then they have some sort of damage, whether it's lightning damage, projectile damage, damage with bows, damage with hits against rares and uniques. And then I do have attack speed on all of them, either attack speed or attack speed with bows. And then I'm obviously using the Against the Darkness. And then like these little nodes right here I took just because they buff, 4% cold, 4% cold, another 4% cold. And if you're using an evasion chest, you obviously could like drop these pieces. You could take the evasion from equipped body armor. You could take the evasion and dexterity here. You could take this here. Keep going over some more. So my quiver, it's really not the best, but stacking the quiver jewels like that, it adds like insane damage. That's like really good way to scale your damage. And then Hand of Wisdom in action. Item is really broken. I'm pretty sure every build in the game is using this along with the heralds. This would probably be like the very first item that I'd recommend buying. Like if you're just getting into maps, this would be the first thing, and then either stacking flat cold as much as you can to proc the heralds, or getting it against the darkness would be like the second item I'd get. Those would be like the number 1 and 2 priority. Probably say the Howl is probably like the number 1 priority, and then this could be like, 1A, or 1A could be your cold damage, and then 2 would be the other. Let's see. It's basically the tree, and I'm gonna go through the rest of it. To use all of these auras, you do need 150 spirit. So I have 50 spirit on my amulet. My amulet's not the best, and I'm using mental perseverance for a little bit of defense, when I would recommend using Doomsayer if you want the clear speed. This is insane for your clear speed, 30% more Herald area effect and damage. Or if you want to get like a little more freeze build up, then you could anoint Essence of the Mountain on your amulet. Like I said, it's kind of expensive. It's about a div for like the distilled emotions. And then for the jewels, like when you're scaling your quiver, you do want to stack up to 150% bonus quiver effect. And you do get 80 from this little node cluster here. There's 15, 30, another 15, 10, 10. So you get 80 from these nodes. And then you need 70 from your jewels. So, depending on what your jewels are, or how many jewels you have, you can kind of do the math and see what the minimum percent you need on your jewels are. Because the 150 is minimum, but obviously you want as much as you can get. I think I'm at like 210% or 220%, something like that. Yeah. And then I have flat damage. I am stacking rarity on all of my gear. 2 socket at home with 49 rarity, life, res. You want as much life and res as you can get on everything. You do want to have 75 on all 4 resists if possible. Like I only have 53 chaos, but ideally you'd want all 4 at 75, but 50 chaos is fine if you're struggling to, get the gear. All the rarity. I think I'm at 206% rarity right now. 206, yeah. 200 is pretty good, like 250, 300. But I think like pushing up towards the 300, you're kind of getting diminishing returns. It's very expensive. I would recommend at least 100, 200, like somewhere around there. Anything over 100 and then anything around 2, I think is perfect. You get a good amount of damage, survivability. Like you don't have to give up too much to get the 200. So I do have movement speed, life, rarity, 2 sockets, resist. I do have a headhunter with resist implicit. I know a lot of people do like using a ingenuity. It does give a lot more damage. With ingenuity, I think I'm at like 105k tooltip. But since I run like a lot of breach in my maps and a lot of delirium, I do like the headhunter. It adds like a lot of clear speed. You get the movement speed when you get it. Extra projectiles, just nice. It's like fast. And then for the chest, I am using a Temporalis, and my tree is a little scuffed, but I don't really struggle with defense. Like I don't really die to much in maps, and I mean I only have, I think I go to 56% evasion, and I don't really die to much unless it's like a on ground death effect in like a delirium fog that you can't really see. I think that's about it for the gear. But I would recommend the rare evasion chest, at least 2k, and then you just take the evasion nodes on the tree. Or if you want to have similar clear speed to a Temporalis, the Queen of the Forest is pretty insane. If you can stack the evasion, you get so much movement speed. But I think that's about it. The charms, I do use a frozen charm, and then I use a stun charm. Flasks, you can kind of use whatever. I would recommend, if you have the currency and you're kind of like in the end game and you're, you know, able to get it, I would get the Orlosk flask, I think it's called, from the expedition bosses. I don't have one. I mean, I don't really mind like dying and stuff like that. I think that's about it for the gear, though. If you guys have any questions or anything that you need me to answer, you know, help out, I will answer everything in the comments. So just let me know if you're struggling with something or I didn't go over anything good, then feel free to ask. I am pretty active on the YouTube, and I'll do my best to answer everybody. Hopefully y'all have a good day and get some currency drops. Have some fun. See ya.